The assassination and betrayal of Julius Caesar. Everyone knows Julius Caesar, right? He was one of the most successful and famous military leaders that ever lived. He was so good that they killed him. We already know as YouTubers that the more haters and dislikes you have, the more successful you are. Having lots of haters and people who want to murder you in cold blood out of pure envy is an accurate gauge of just how popular you really are. Jesus Christ, he's another popular one they killed. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, John Candy, and the list goes on. Brown bread dead, snuffed it, croaked it, kicked the bucket, goners, flatliners, ceased to exist, done for. I just want to point out at this moment we are talking about Caesar, the Roman Emperor, and not a salad or a popular hotel/casino in Atlantic City. The beginning, from rags to riches. Although Julius Caesar wasn't born to an influential Roman family, he swiftly rose through the ranks of the military to a prominent position of power. He then forged a political alliance with a military general named Crassus, who was also known as the wealthiest man in the history of the Roman Empire. Caesar then aligned himself with another influential political and military leader of the time, Pompey. The allegiance of these three men was a trinity of power that became known as the First Triumvirate that unofficially led the Roman Republic. This was causing concern amongst the richer families in Rome and Roman state, who wanted to keep the status quo in place and to block the possibility of one force running Rome. Caesar is rightly considered as one of the greatest military commandos in history, with a bulging sack of accomplishments to his name. The First Triumvirate agreed that Caesar was to be appointed as consul in 59 BC, which at the time was the most important political position in the Roman Republic. Caesar eventually had a falling out with both Crassus and Pompey that resulted in bitter wars. With the death of Crassus in 53 BC, Pompey joined forces with the Roman state, who by now severely opposed Caesar. By this time, Caesar had proclaimed himself to be the dictator for life of the Roman Republic and started wearing red boots, which cemented his kingly status. The betrayal, the plan to assassinate Caesar. The Roman state, in conjunction with Pompey, were not too happy in regards to Caesar declaring himself as the king, or dictator, and began hatching a plan to take down the illustrious ruler and reclaim Rome for the state. By this time, Caesar was already well aware of his enemies and detractors in high places, while also being aware that maybe the Roman people didn't want a king or a dictator to begin with. Caesar and his trusted friend and right-hand man, Mark Antony, tested the Roman people at a festival to see if they wanted Caesar to be king. He took off his crown in a gesture that implied he didn't want to be king anymore, which was met with applause from the people in attendance. This was not a good sign for the ruler, and not the outcome he expected, but he carried on ruling regardless. The Roman state and Pompey knew that Caesar wouldn't meet them, for obvious reasons. They needed to gain the exalted leader's trust, but that was pretty difficult being a bunch of stone-cold killers and backstabbers. They needed someone on their side that oozed trust and honesty, which is why they courted the popular and much-loved Brutus to be their leader. Brutus was known throughout Rome for his honesty, and also had a good relationship with Caesar at the time. These things combined to make Brutus the perfect bait to lure Caesar for the catch. Time was of the essence, as the dictator for life was leaving Rome on the 15th of March 44 BC to lead his troops into battle. He would then be surrounded by his trusty soldiers and would be an impossible assassination target. Caesar was invited by Brutus to give a speech at the Roman Senate on the morning of the 15th, a few hours before leaving for battle. It was a speech that was going to turn ugly. Everyone around Caesar advised him not to go. Caesar believed in fate and decided to go to the meeting regardless, despite the warning from family and friends. A fortune teller told Caesar not to go to the meeting, but he didn't listen. Caesar's wife asked him not to go and was having reoccurring nightmares that something bad was going to happen. Caesar fell terribly ill on the morning of the Senate speech and was almost too ill to attend, but he still went anyway. No matter how much his friends and the universe warned him of the imminent danger, he still decided to go along anyway, and the rest is history. The writing was already on the wall, the betrayal was nigh, the scene was set. The scene was set for disaster. The assassination. Have you ever woken up in the morning and thought, everything is going to be perfect today? This wasn't one of those kinds of days for Caesar. As bad days go, this was right up there with the worst of them. Caesar entered the Senate like Don Corleone and was greeted by the entire ensemble standing up to show their respect for their leader and dictator. That was a pretty good start, and as good as it was going to get for Julie. Although Caesar was a little reluctant when first entering the Senate, when he saw Brutus was present, his worries evaporated into the ether. You know, because everyone trusts Brutus, right? As Caesar presented himself to the Senate, some of Brutus's goons snuck up behind him, and as the people came towards Caesar to greet him, the first slash was administered to the leader's neck from behind. All of the assassins and killers at this point took out their knives and began bludgeoning Caesar to death, much to the shocked silence of the surprised onlookers who just watched the butchering unfold but did nothing to help the dying dictator. The story tells that Caesar was trying to defend himself against the killers and putting up a decent fight in a relative sense, but when he saw Brutus stabbing him in the groin, he pulled his own robe over his head and sank down. Such was the disappointment because he had trusted Brutus to do the right thing. The killers then pushed Caesar against a statue of his old enemy, Pompey, which became soaked in blood. There was a total of 23 stab wounds found on Caesar's body. As the great Biggie Smalls once said, "It's the ones that smoke blunts with you, see your picture, now they want to grab the guns and come and get you." The aftermath. It was a betrayal of the highest order, one that we still talk about today. However, the killers didn't murder Caesar's trusted friend, Mark Antony, because the honest Brutus said it would be the wrong thing to do. He was wrong. This was a grave misjudgment by the killers. Mark Antony regrouped with Caesar's soldiers and came for the killers in retaliation for his friend's death, with several successful battle campaigns that eventually won the day and gained some retribution for the betrayal of Caesar. Brutus committed suicide when Mark Antony's army defeated his troops in 42 BC at Philippi. Caesar had left his fortune to his grandnephew, Octavian, who then went on to become the kind of ruler and dictator that Caesar always wanted to be, striking fear in the hearts of the Romans.